Hello, this is Robbie Naylor from STI, and I will be doing the Alabama INFocus Webinar training. In this training, I have several objectives. The main objective is to get you comfortable with certain reports so that you can learn to move and maneuver in INFocus on your own and learn to make your own reports in INFocus. I will be doing several report examples trying to show you different ways to make different styles for different reports. Where I want to begin is under reports and INFocus, but really before I jump there, just as a quick reminder, permissions do need to be set for certain people to be able to access INFocus. If you need help with getting that access set up, please feel free to call your customer care rep and they can walk you through the setting up of the permissions. Now, once you are in INFocus, or once you have clicked on reports and then clicked on INFocus, it automatically opens this tab if you're using Mozilla Firefox, which is the browser that I will be using this afternoon. If you're in Internet Explorer, it will open in another window. In Chrome, I believe it also opens a tab, but of course, you know, we only support Internet Explorer and Mozilla Firefox. Now, I will tell you that it does work in Chrome, however, we can't help you really troubleshoot issues. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on INFocus again. When I do that, as you see, it's spinning right here. That's telling me that the program is now accessing the INFocus portion. And the timeouts between the INFocus reporting tool and the timeout in Information Now, there are actually two different timeouts. So you can find, you will find from time to time that you'll actually get kicked out of Information Now before you get kicked out of INFocus. Just wanted to let you be aware of that, depending on the timeouts that you have. All right? Now, when you first log in, the very first time you log into INFocus, you will see a personal report section. That's where it always takes people. It's the first place you always go. Now, you won't have these reports listed here, but once you begin building your own reports, every time you enter, you will see your reports. They are listed, if you'll notice here, they're listed in date order, okay? So when you start to have a lot of reports, what you may even want to do is, if you'll notice that my user has started to organize their personal reports by creating folders in here. You notice on the ad, when I hover my mouse over it, I don't even have to click, I just hover the mouse over it and it automatically gives me the option to add a report or a dashboard, and dashboards are more advanced, so we're not going to be going into dashboards right now. But it also gives me the option to create a folder. And when you create a folder, you just simply click on New Folder, name it, and give it a description, and then save it. Now, once you save it, you can then take any reports that you have created, such as my enrolled lunch counts. Well, that's a miscellaneous report, or it's a student general report. I can highlight any of these reports that I feel need to go into one of these folders, and then I can choose to move them. Notice I'm multi-selected, and so I'm moving two reports from my personal reports root folder to, say, my student general folder. And once I click on Save, it takes me back here, and now those reports are under this report folder. Okay? So that's getting also a little bit advanced, not very much so, just a little bit of information as far as organizing. So now let's jump into actually building a report. I'm going to come here to Add, and I'm going to click on Report. When I do that, it's going to open up this window here where you see the different templates available to you. The default template will always be a blank template, meaning that if I chose to, I could click on OK right now and have a blank report that I can add anything I want to. Or I can choose one of the other templates that are provided for me. A tabular report with header, a tabular report without header, a crosstab report, a bar chart, a tabular report with chart, and a tabular report with export. For the purposes of our example and to go along with the documentation for this WebEx, I am going to be choosing a tabular report with header. Once I select that and click on OK, it will take me to the next section, which is where I select or modify my data source. What we do in INFocus is we take all the tables and we create the relationships needed for the user, the end user, to be able to pull information out of those tables and create reports without you having to know any SQL or anything like that. Now, there are some areas of INFocus, if you do know SQL, that you can take your SQL knowledge and take INFocus even further. But you are not required to know SQL in any way to be able to do the most basic functions in INFocus, and even some of the intermediate functions in INFocus can be achieved with even just the modest amount or even no knowledge of SQL, but just a little bit of guidance. All right? Now, one thing I want you to notice is that it says data objects in all up here. There is actually another all, and I'm going to choose it. I recommend when you come in here that you do this from time to time, because there are sometimes fields that you may not see or things that you might be looking for in this list that you won't notice until you change this right here. Now, that won't always be the case, and it won't be the case with just basic reports, but even this report, which I'm going to do now, which is a basic report, it does require me to add this because one of the data elements that I want to use is not in the regular all, it's in this all. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start selecting my data sources. Now, depending on the data source you select first, you will see that other data sources disappear once you select them. The way to think of it is that it's a one-to-many selection and relationship. In other words, when I click on absence reason, there's not really, if I'm choosing absence reason as my first data source, there aren't many other tables that are related to absence reason if I'm looking for absence reasons. Okay? I know it sounds kind of crazy because, well, that's daily absences. Shouldn't that be? Well, actually what it is that daily absence has a relationship to absence reason and a relationship to academic session and a relationship to student. So when I choose daily absence, it gives me all of those. So then I can choose my absence reason and I can choose my student. And when I do that, one more little tip here is you'll notice that there are two items right here that say academic session. Whenever you hover your mouse over these items, it tells you what they are related to. This is the daily absence academic session table, and this is the student academic session table. Multiple tables within the program will have their own academic session. Most of the time you're going to need this one here, the one that is the student academic session table. Okay. Now, again, you won't be able to just click right here and see that this is the student academic session table. The best way to do it is to either hover your mouse, or if you'll notice, there's a little tree right here that I can click on and it gives me what is in there. Okay. Or I can click on the magnifying glass to preview the data, and that can also give me a better idea of what is inside this table and is it the one I'm looking for. Okay. Now, it just really depends on different things that you're selecting. All right. Now, let me go back here. I'm going to unselect the top right there, daily absence, and when I do that, it deselects all the others. Okay. The first one I want to choose for our example is the enrollment transaction table or data source. Once I select that, it narrows it down to these two choices. The next choice I'm going to click on is enrollment transaction academic session. Okay? And then you'll notice once I do that, it actually pulls in the student because there's a relationship with this to the student. All right? Then I have my enrollment code, enrollment reason in school. I want to choose actually student. And then once I select student, it opens all of these tables or data sources. And the other one I want to select is the grade level. Okay? Now when I select grade level, it moves it up here, and now we have our 4 example data objects or data sources selected for beginning our example report. Now, I want to give you an example of one of the slightly more advanced features of INFocus. And I say slightly more advanced because you kind of have to watch it and pay attention to understand how to use it. But once you see it and once you figure out how to use it, it will become one of your favorite tools in INFocus. And that is a calculated column. I'm going to create a calculated column because when I create my report, I want to be able to have the student's last name and the student's first name. Now, if you look over here, this is the columns that I have selected from the different data objects. So it shows them all to me, and if I look through the list, I'll see I have student first name, I have student last name, and I even have student middle name. Sorry, it is further down here, middle name. And then I also have name. Now, what these do is when I select them individually, it creates columns for each one of those items. Or in the name category, what it does is it pulls the display name, which is last, comma, first, middle. Well, I said I want the last name, or a comma, and then I want the first name. And I want them all in one column, not in 2 columns. The only way to do that is to do what we call a calculated column. And it's a text calculated column. And I'm going to use the concatenate function here to join the 2 data elements together that I want, the 2 strings that I want. When I click on concatenate, it automatically enters that little symbol you saw behind it, and it opens string 1 and string 2. And then it shows me again all of the data elements and the columns that I have selected. So I can now scroll down and I can say, well, string 1 is going to be student last name. And string 2 is going to be student first name. And then I'll click on OK. And it brings it over here and it builds that in my definition for me in INFocus, and I can click on test. When I click on test, what it'll do is it will give me, here's my calculated table, concatenated text of last name, then first name. Here's the student last name, here's the student first name. Now you'll notice there's no space in between. So what I want to do to get the space in between, I have to come in here, and again, this is just slightly advanced. What I want to do is I want to add a comma and a space between the first and the last middle name. So I have to place the cursor right here behind the plus. I put in a single quote. I put in a comma, a space, and a single quote. Then the last thing I have to do is I have to add another plus. So what I'm telling you is to take the student last name plus a comma with a space plus the student first name. So now when I click on test, it shows me Hayes, comma, Lisa. I can click on close and I can click on save. But before I do, I'm going to name my table here, or my column, my calculated column. My calculated column, I'm going to name it, for our example, student last first name. Okay? And then click on save. Once I click on save, you'll notice that it actually adds that calculated column over to the left for me. Not only does it add it here, but it automatically adds it over here for my data element. Okay? And it shows me that the data element in here is student last first name. That's the only data element that's in there. Right now I want to go over to the Sort tab. And on the Sort tab, I'm going to add 3 columns to sort with. You can sort once you get into the report itself, but you can also add sort levels, so to speak, or columns on the data source before you get to the other area. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Add a Column here. And I'm going to add the first column here. I will choose Student School. So I'll scroll down till I find student.school. And then I'm going to add another column. I'm going to add grade level dot sequence. And that is why you choose the grade level data element. And the reason you're going to choose the grade level data element is that you've got the sequence there, and sometimes your grade levels, like in Alabama, we have 97, 98, 99. Well, 97, 98, 99 are actually the first 3 grade levels, and their sequences that they were entered before the other grade levels. So they should be the higher sequence number, thus putting them at the top rather than at the bottom. And that's why we choose grade level data element over just using the student grade level, which is also in the student table. All right? But I'm going to add that source right here so that we have the grade level sequence. And then I'm going to add the column of student.name. I'm not using my calculated column because I'm fine with it using this already pre-created display name column to put the students in last name order. All right? So that is how you can begin a sort. I can remove any of these by clicking on the X. I can use these little dots right here to grab and move any of the elements and say I want it student last name, then or school, then last name, then grade, or whatever. All right? So that's how you can move those up and down. Now once I have selected my sort and created all the different elements I want, I'm going to go ahead at this point. I'm going to just click on OK. And what that does is it brings me back to my table area here. And I'm on the Table Columns tab. Okay? And what I want to do from here is select the columns or the data parts, the available columns, the data elements that I've selected, and I'm going to assign them to be my assigned columns for printing on the report. All right? Now, it's a multi-select, and so I can come down here and I can choose all my elements at the same time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose School. Well, I want to choose Student, School, Student Grade Level, my calculated field, Student Birth Date, Student Ethnicity, and Student Gender. Now, they're in alphabetical order based on the data element, not the area or the table that the element is coming from, okay? The column element here. So my first thing that I want is Student Birth Date. If I go up here, or actually it's not really the first thing I want, but it's the first thing in the list, Student Birth Date. Then if I come down, the next thing in the list is going to be Student Ethnicity. Then will be the student, the student birth date. Oh, I've already got birth date. Student Ethnicity. Then Student Gender. Then I'll choose further down the grade level. Then further down the school. And finally my calculated columns field, student name, down here at the bottom, or student last first name down at the very bottom. When I select that, it's going to move everything over to the right, but if you'll notice, it moves it over in the order in which it is listed. That's not the order I want it. I want school to be at the top. So I'm going to hold down my mouse button. I'm clicking left click, single click, and then holding it down and then dragging my mouse down. That's just one way of multi-selecting. Another way would be, of course, to use the control key and multi-select the columns I have above school. I want to select all of those and move them down, because what that does is it moves student school down above all of these, all at one time. All right? And then I really want to move my grade level and my calculated column above birth date and ethnicity. So yes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these, and I'm going to click them to move up once to get above gender, once to get above ethnicity, and then one more time to get above the birth date. So now I have my data column set up to match our example in the documentation. All right? You truly can set these in any order that you want. This is just showing you how you can manipulate table columns after you've decided what you want to print on your report. All right? Now, from here I'm going to go to the column configuration tab. The reason I want to come into here is I can come here and you'll see it says the column is school, grade level, first last name, or last first name, birth date, ethnicity, and gender. Well, some of these I'm fine with, but some of them I'd like to change the way they look. Grade level, I want to make it shorter. I'm going to do GL. Student last first name is really just way too much. I just want to change the name of this, so I'm going to just make it student. So when it prints on the report, it's just student. Birth date, I'd rather it say date of birth, so I'll do DOB, or I can do date of birth. However you would like to have it appear, you can do that, okay? Now, you can check each one of these elements individually and say that these elements are sortable, or you can select this box at the top that makes all the data elements sortable, so that we're already sorting by school, by grade level, and by last name. But I also want to be able to sort by date of birth or ethnicity or gender. I can select all of these, and then I can, as long as I select them all, I'll show you how I can change my sort and get my sort back to the original sort order before I print. All right? That is the way to sort after you have sorted in your data source. Now, if you'll notice, my layout has multiple items in it. However, what you see is the advanced column configuration. What I actually want to do is I want to show you what it'll look like when you first log in. Most likely, the very first time that you log in, when you come to the column configuration section, it will look like this, which shows you your basic things, where your column names are, how to change the header, and to make things sortable, and to move your columns up and down. Now, you'll notice, too, that I have the little dots here, so I can grab and move the columns here, as well as selecting individuals and using the arrows, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and click this on again so that when you do come in here, if you see it like that with just the minimum, you can click on those arrows to show you the advanced column attributes, okay? It'll show you all the attributes. Now, using this, you'll notice I have this little summary and have a little icon, modify summary row, okay? It allows me to add a summary row to the columns here. So what I want to do is I want to just get a basic count, all right? And so what I'm going to do is I am going to click on the summary row for student name. And when I do, it opens the aggregates for student last first name column. And I'm going to click on Add an Aggregate. When I do that, it allows me to give it a label. I'm going to call this Total Students. I'm going to make it a count. I'm going to format it to be an integer. Okay? And then I'll simply click on OK. When I do this, at this point I'm going to go up here. This little icon right here or right here, either one will give me a preview of my report. I'll click on this and will let me preview my report. Alright? When I preview my report, I see all the names just like this, okay? And on the last page, I'll go all the way to the last page, it gives me my total, my aggregate total here. Alright? Now, let me close my preview. And I want to show you some more options you have with the advanced attribute. Some of the other options I have are that I can change the width of the pixels of the report. One more time, let me click on the preview so you can see again that when I do get this report, all of these items are real close together. So if I printed them out, it would print like a little box here, which is fine, but it's not quite the way I want it to look on the report. All right, so I'm going to close this right here, and I'm going to come back here, and right here in the width, the pixel width here, and if you'll notice I've clicked on it, I can also do a percentage if I want, but I'm going to leave it set to the pixel. That's the easier one to do. I'm going to set my pixels to be for my school. I'm going to make them 200. Okay? And then my grade level, I want the pixels to be set to 100. I want my first name, my student name set to 200. I want my birth date set to 100. I want to set my ethnicity to 200. And my gender to 100. Once I set those, now when I preview the report, it's going to be a lot wider. It's going to give me a lot more room. Okay? Now I can also, let me go back here. I wanted to show you that I can change the alignment right here by selecting left, right, or center. So I'm going to tell it that I want to center the name. I want to center the date of birth. I want to center the ethnicity. And now let me preview that report. So now here we have our centered name, date of birth, ethnicity. Okay? So that gives you just a few more options as far as, like I said, a bit of information as far as how you can change some of the style of your report. We'll get into some more style options in a little while. Now, where I want to go to now is I want to actually jump back, not necessarily jump back a step, but I'm going to add something in now. I've gotten my report the way that I want it to look. I've got my layout here as far as the data that I want on it. But I'm getting a lot of kids on here. So what I want to do is I want to take it back now, and I want to get rid of kids that are not enrolled. I want my currently enrolled students, but I'm going to do it more than just the simple way. Okay? And what I mean by that is, let me jump back here to my modified data source. Now the simple way to get currently enrolled students, there's one quick, easy way. I'm going to come back here to my modified data source. I'm going to click on Filter, and I'm going to add the parameter of student enrollment status equal to specific value. And this is one of my favorite little gadgets right here, the magnifying glass. When I'm creating a parameter, when I click on it and I'm looking for a specific value for this data element, when I click on that, it's going to show me here are the elements available to you. Enrolled, registered, withdrawn. Okay? So I'm going to choose Enrolled and click on OK. And so now I'm going to tell in the data source that all I want are students whose enrollment status is equal to the specific value of enrolled, and I'm going to click on OK. All right? I'm going to click on OK again. And now I'm going to preview this report because I want you to show you what it does, but then I'm going to explain to you why I'm going to do it a little bit more, a little snazzier, so to speak. So this gives me all the students that are currently enrolled on this date. So if I came back in here and ran this report, I wanted to find out, well, I ran it on November 8th, and these are all the students that were enrolled. Well, I come back on December 7th, and I need to run it again, and I need to know the students that were enrolled on November 8th. If I run this report, I'm not going to necessarily get just the students who were enrolled on November 8th. The way I have it set now, I'll get everyone who's enrolled as of the date that I'm running it, and I won't get anyone who's withdrawn as of the date that I'm running it. So I want to take it to a different level. And by doing this, I'm going to make it so that I can select students who are enrolled on or before a specific date. I do this by coming here to the filter. First, I'm going to take out the element that I've already added in. I'm going to delete this element out. I'm going to now add a parameter. And the parameter is going to be the enrollment transaction action class, enrollment action class. The operator is going to be in list. So I can tell it that I want a specific list of enrollment action classes. I'm going to click on my little magnifying glass to see which ones they are. There's E for enrolled, R, which is not registered in this case, but actually re-enrolled, and then there's W. So I actually want the E and I want the R, because I want students who are enrolled or re-enrolled. I'll click on OK. They'll be in my list. I'll click on OK. And now that is my parameter. Now I could preview at this point, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add a few more elements to take this all the way so that I can find the students on the particular date that I'm looking for. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by adding another parameter. Now once I do that, this automatically defaults to and this parameter is going to be an AND. So I've got my enrollment transaction, enrollment action class set to E or R, and I want my enrollment transaction reported date, which is their enrollment date. All right? And I want that to be less than or equal to, and then I'm going to make my value here, I'm going to change it from specific value to a predefined date. When I select predefined date, you'll notice that it changes the parameter details, and it automatically gives me the option of today. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself the option to ask in report. When I do this, I'm going to type in the caption right here of count date. The reason I'm doing this the way I'm doing it is I want to be able to tell it that I want to find all students whose enrollment transaction action class is either E for enrolled or R for re-enrolled, and their enrollment transaction reported date or their enrollment date is less than or equal to today. But because I told it to ask me when I get ready to build the report, it will actually give me the option to select a specific day for finding students who are enrolled. Now, I will go ahead just for a brief moment and click on OK here and do a little preview here so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, when I get ready to run my report, it says count date. It shows me the date of today right here by default. But like I said, if it were I needed to see who was enrolled actually on October the 2nd of this year, or October I believe the 2nd was the end of the first 20 days. But I can choose that date and click on Run. The students that I see will be the students who were enrolled on or before October 2nd of 2012. Now, there's still some more things I have to do to take this all the way to that point. But I wanted you to see that that's why we choose the Ask and Report. All right? That's what the Ask and Report gives us. All right? So now I'm going to go back to modifying my data source and go back to my filter. All right, now here in the filter, I've already got it set to look for E or R, to look for today or ask me the date that I want, but I need actually something more to narrow it down to just those certain classes of students. All right, so I'm going to click on Add a Parameter, and I'm going to click on the Enrollment Transaction End Date. All right, End Date. And this is also an and. I want students whose enrollment transaction end date is greater than enrollment transaction end date, I selected time, I want it to be the date greater than or equal to, and now I'm going to choose my input filter, which when I select that, basically what that's doing is it's telling the program, use my count date. Whatever my count date is, the enrollment transaction end date must be greater than or equal to. The reason for that is, again, if I'm going back to run this for the past and the student has withdrawn as of the day that I'm checking for this information, but was enrolled on that date, I don't want them to be left off this report. So I want to make sure that their enrollment end date or their withdrawal date is greater than or equal to my count date. All right? I'm going to click on OK. And when I do, I'm going to move this over. These arrows allow me to move these elements up, down, left, or right. When you move them to the left or the right, you group them. Okay? And I want to group this one and this one together. And now I'm going to add another parameter. This time it's going to be an OR. This is our first OR, because I also want to choose my enrollment transaction end time equal to or is null. And I click on OK. And this time I'm going to move it over once. I'm going to move it over twice. And that groups that into here. And so now I'm making sure that I have no students who are withdrawn as of my count date, but are enrolled on my count date. All right? So that helps me narrow that down. Well, I also want to narrow it down to a particular year. So if I'm working on this report and I want it to be for this year, I'm going to add the parameter of and, I'll leave it set to and my academic session start date, right here, academic session start date is less than my count date. Okay. And my academic session end date is greater than my count date. All right, so now here are my data elements, that are my filter elements. All right, and I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to move this over again. I want to group those together. so that this is a grouping here. My academic session start date is less than my count date, so meaning that the academic year began before the date that I selected, and that my academic session end date is greater than the date that I'm selecting. All right. So we've built in our filters, and so we've got the academic sessions that are during the date that I'm looking for, students who are enrolled on those particular days or re-enrolled, but not excluding students when I go back to run this report later. Like I said, you can do the simple way, and that will always give you the students as of the day that you run it. But this is a great way to create a report that lets you run for particular days and get the information for those students. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna click on OK. Once I have selected all of these and added all these filter parameters, I want to come back here to my report section, and I'm going to add a few more things before I run. Now, I will go ahead, let me do this. I actually want to give you a preview. So I'm going to click on the preview here of the report, and I'm going to click on Run. And now I have only 4 pages, where before I had multiple pages, or many more than 4. Now I only have 4 pages. Now I'm going to add something to the recording, and I want you to take note of this. This is not in the documentation. I may try and get the documentation updated to include this, but just in case, I want to mention one thing. If you'll notice, Derek Hudson and Mason Smith are on this report more than one time. Several students are on here more than one time if we went through the pages. There's a reason for that. Because of some of the data elements that I selected and the objects that I've selected, I've got some duplicate rows, and because of that, it's going to print the students on there more than once. If I come back here to my modify data source, let me show you that again. I'm going to leave this page because I didn't want to save any changes yet. Click on modify data source, and now I'm going to choose exclude duplicate rows. When I exclude the duplicate rows, it's going to only give me those students once per page, or once per record, rather. Now, the other thing I want to check on, if you noticed, I believe I've got a parentheses appearing in my filter here. In my count date, it was showing the parentheses. I want to make sure that I don't have in my... Okay, good. Wanted to be sure that I did not. And notice that when I try and modify something that I have already had as an ask in report, it tells me, are you sure you want to do this? I'm going to just say cancel, and I'm going to cancel here and cancel again. I'm not going to actually save any changes to that one. All right. I was just checking because, and this is something that was asked before. Notice how it puts this parentheses there. That, I believe, is just possibly a small mistake somewhere where it's picking up picking this up when it's not actually in the area. Now, this doesn't even appear on the report anyway. This is just giving me the option to set my date. Now, I always click on Run when I'm testing this, but when I get ready to run it in real time, I would click on Run and Hide parameters, because I don't need to see all of that. All right? So, there you go. Just wanted to show you that. So, all right, let's close here. Let's get back into the grouping and some of the other settings within this report. But to be honest, before I get ready to group, there is one more thing that I think I should do at this point. If I were talking to a user, if I were working with anybody that was out there that was one of my customers on the phone, the first thing I would say to do at this point, probably would have said it a while back before going any further, is of course to save. We've yet to save this report. And how frustrating would it be to do all this work and then not be able to keep it because I forgot to save it early on and my computer died, the server went off, something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on Save, and I'm going to name my report. And I'm going to name this report, I want to name it Students Enrollment Date Specific. Now, once I've named it, depending on my rights as a user, I can save it to my personal reports folder, or if I have maintain rights, I can save it to a shared reports folder and give it to let other people use it. Now, if I don't have maintain rights, I can only save it to my personal. Okay? That doesn't mean I can't view shared reports. It just means I can't save to them or change shared reports. But that's a whole other class, to be quite honest. So I'm going to save this into my personal reports, and because I'm doing an enrollment report, I'm going to classify that more as an attendance report maybe, or a student report, so I can tell it to save it in one of these folders as well. Okay? So not only am I saving it in my personal reports, I'm saving it into my student reports folder. Alright? Click on OK. And so now I've saved my report. I haven't lost anything that I've done thus far, and that's great. I won't lose anything in weeks later on. Alright? So, getting back into here, let's talk about the grouping. Okay? We're just going to do a basic grouping on here, which is a grouped flat table. There's groups drill down. You can also do, but I'm going to do a group flat table. And I can add as many grouping layers as I want. I'm going to start off with one grouping layer of student school. Okay? Now, because I am using Mozilla Firefox, and I want to take a moment to mention this, if you are a Firefox user such as myself, when you come into this area and you come into to add the grouping columns, you'll notice when I scroll up and down, it doesn't seem to show me all of the ones that I want. Well, I need to use this little guy here to scroll over a little bit, and then it'll give me this little scroll right here. That is particular to Mozilla Firefox. If you're not a Firefox user, if you're an Internet Explorer user, it will not do that. As a tip, Tim Murphy showed me that if I come in here and don't select anything but then click on OK, it gets angry at me and it says at least one column must be selected down at the bottom, but then it also loads this area of the page so that I can scroll all the way down. He and I have talked about that. It's a strange Mozilla Firefox issue that we have no control over. All right? But still, I just wanted you to see that if you are a Firefox user. If you're not, don't worry about it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down until I find Student School. So I highlight Student School, and I click on the arrow to move it to the right. That's my first grouped column, all right? And I'm going to click on OK. And now I'm going to click on the preview to preview my report. And when I run it now, it gives me Adams Jones Middle School and then the students. Washington High School and then the students. Okay? So instead of repeating the names over and over again, it groups that name one time. All right? I will close my report, and I want to add another grouping layer, but in this grouping layer, I am going to add the student grade level, and because I'm going to use Tim's trick, I'll click on that. I'm going to add the student grade level, and this is also a multi-select. I'm going to add the student gender. I want both of those in here, and I want to move grade level up. And I can move it up here, or click on OK, and I can go back and edit it and move them later if I choose. All right. Now I've added this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to preview it this way. And so now I have my school, my grade level, my gender, and then my students. Okay? Close again. Because I want to go back now and add a few more things to my grouping. All right? This little icon here lets me edit my layer. So I want to go back to my school, and I want to edit my layer, and I want to add an aggregate column. So I'm going to click on Add Aggregate Column. Now when you're doing these, you'll only have the columns for the that I've selected already here, okay? And I'm going to choose Student, School. I'm going to set the aggregate count function to count, and I'm going to put a label here and I'm going to call it total. Okay? Then I will click on OK. Now, I'm going to click on OK, but I'm going to save that and then preview it. And then I want to go back there and talk about one other element on that page. Okay, so here's my school, here's my total. Here's my school, and on this page is my total, because I only have 2 schools on this report. Okay? Now, I want to go back for a moment, because I want to talk about something else on this grouping layer. I'm doing an aggregate by the school, getting a count, and getting the total. I meant to mention this before. There is this right here. Insert a page break between groups on PDF export. And let me make sure this is clear. We're going to add the exports in so I can show you how you can export this information. Once you've previewed it to the screen, you'll have many options that are open to you as far as exporting it and doing more with this data. When I choose the PDF, if I want to print it out and post it somewhere, and I want it to be split by school so I can send the individual schools to the individual places, I want to be able to print it out and have it already split. If I choose this option, it will automatically create a page break for me in the PDF export. Okay? I just want to go ahead and mention that now, because that will come up later, and it would as something we would like to be able to have. All right. Now I want to go ahead and add an aggregate column here, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to click on this, and because I have multiple columns here, it doesn't look quite the same as it did before. I can actually even add some columns, more columns if I want. I don't. I want to click on the Add Aggregate Column. And I want to add this aggregate column with the grade level to be a count and get a total, just as the other. All right? And we'll click on OK and preview the report. Now I have my school, grade level, and gender, and then my total for each, and then my overall total. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on Save again to save the work so I don't lose that. I'm going to come here to my Table Settings tab. And on the Table Settings tab, I have the ability to add a title if I would like. And I have saved titles. Now, this is, again, a feature of Firefox, so you will not have this necessarily in Internet Explorer. But you can, once you've typed into certain areas in Firefox, it stores those. I'm going to put this as Enrolled Student Listing. I want to change my rows per page, rather. And I want to make it 25 rows per page. And then I also have the option to show record count and include the row number. I can make interactive paging. It's already on. I can turn it off and make it a numbered list. I can have it put a summary row on the bottom or the top, and it defaults to showing the summary row once on the bottom of the last page. But I can choose all pages. Now, the reason for the all pages is, let's say you're building a particular report that's several pages, hundreds of pages long, and whoever's going to be viewing it may be on page 800 of 1,000 and needs to know the summary row off the top. That way they can view it on each page and immediately get it. All right, that's just an option. Otherwise, it'll print on the bottom of the last page. All right, I'll save again. Let's preview again. Now I have more students on a page. It makes fewer pages, and then on the last page still have my total count here of 52 students. Okay? Now I want to come up here and talk about these tabs. We've already used the File tab with the saves. We could click right here and go ahead and create another new one. We could open a previously worked on report. We can use the Save As to save a copy of this report, which we're going to do later on, or the preview right there. I want to click on the Insert tab, and I want to talk about inserting exports. Now, if you notice right here, this kind of shows you what our report looks like every time we click on Preview. Well, this is just a little preview of the type of report we're working on. If we added in any of these other things, it would take them over here. If I were to click on this X, that takes our header out. If I decide I want the header in, I just click on header and it inserts the header. And I can say put in the date and the time. Okay? But let's say I also want to add exports. So when I click on exports, it puts them in on the bottom here, but then it shows it to me right here. It adds that tab and gives me the options that I can select. Gives me the option of creating a searchable report, printable paging, export to Excel, to Word, PDF, comma separated values, CSV, or XML. Now, if you notice, it says exporting to a grouped report to CSV or XML may not export all data. Okay, that is important to note, but you still have those options. And then I can also choose to have the ability to send it through email from INFocus as long as that email configuration has already been set up for me. When I do that, and I choose to send it by email, whatever is selected as my file type here is the only file type that I get to send. In other words, I don't have the option when I get ready to send to say, well, I want to make it a Word document. It's normally a PDF, but this time I want to make it a Word. You can't. You have to select it here as to what you want it to be when you email it. Now, I do recommend making it a PDF by default, mostly because despite the fact that everything we do in INFocus to create a report and print it does not change that information when it's sent out, once I send that to somebody, if I send it to them in Word format, in Excel format, in XML or CSV, those are editable forms in which case the user that I sent it to could change it and mess up the report that I was trying to send them. So PDF is more often than not, when you're sending this report to someone else, unless they need it to be able to be manipulated, you're going to want it to be a PDF. All right? And again, I will click on my save. And let's go ahead and click on, I tell you what, before I click on the preview, let me add one more thing. I'm going to jump to the Settings tab, and I'm going to talk about style. We don't need to really worry so much about paging right now. The style is one of the ones that is frequently asked for. And that's how do I change the way it looks, because some of that writing is so hard to read. The default style for all these reports is the light style. You can come in and you can change that. You can click on this drop down and select from the ones that we have preloaded. Classic, gray, etc. The one most commonly used and the one that Tim Murphy from STI prefers himself, and I do like as well, is the professional style. There's also a technology style, but that one, it's still not quite as nice and clean as the professional style. Right? But you'll find the one you like the most, and you'll use that for your reports. Again, changing that, I'm going to go ahead and click on my save, and then click on the preview and show you what that looks like. All right? So that is a much better looking report where we see the name, bold red letters, the grade level, and the gender in bold letters. You'll notice that all of these still have underlines under them because, if you remember earlier on, we set those all to be sortable. I can click on this, and that changes it so that I can sort by school, as I've already done, or I can click on the drop-down, and it'll put my last school first, all right? I can choose grade level and change my sort on my grade levels, gender, student, date of birth, and ethnicity. Now, the important thing to note is that if I were to come back here and try and jump back to school to get it back to my default sorting without having to rerun the report, I can't just come back up here and click on school. I actually have to go backwards. I first have to click on date of birth, then student, then gender, grade level, now school. And that gets us back in the order of the original report. All right? Now, excuse me. What I want to do is I want to go here to the File tab, and I want to choose the Save As option here. Okay? And I'm going to do a Save As. I'm going to do this in my personal report, and I'm going to change the name of this. I'm going to change this to my student enrollment, or actually I'll do this. I'll change it to this. This is the name I'll give it. I like this name. We'll call it Enrollment Crosstab. Date specific. All right? Whoop. So now I have a different report. I am in a different report, but it has the same parameters in it. If I go back to my personal report and actually go back to my student general report, I have my student enrollment date specific and my enrollment crosstab date specific report. Both of them currently do the same thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to modify my enrollment crosstab date specific. What I'm going to start off with is I'm going to come here and I am going to delete the table report object, okay, the tabular report object. I'm going to leave the export, I'm going to leave the header. I'm now going to go back up here to my insert, and I'm going to add the cross tab report. Now once I do that, it adds some things over here, but it still has my data sources set up. I still have my calculated columns and my other options all selected. Now what I want to do from here is I want to jump here to my modify data source temporarily because I want to remove something from my filter. Before I was looking for enrolled students only. Well, now I want enrolled and re-entered and withdrawn. I want all three kinds of flavors of students here. So I'm going to remove, by clicking on this red X, the enrollment transaction, enrollment action class filter. Okay? Click on OK. And so now I'm not filtering by my enrollment transaction class. I'm only filtering by the date. I'm getting all flavors of students, as Tim wants to say. So, what I have to do from here is I have to set up my crosstab configuration. All right. What I have to do is I have to select my header values, and the header values are things like, in this case, I want to make my header value set to the enrollment action class, so that my header values will be enrolled, re-entered, or withdrawn. Okay? So those will be my 3-column headers. The second is my label values, which is the area that goes down the columns. And in that area, I want to choose the label column of student school. Okay? And then we scroll down a little bit here, because what I want to do now is I want to come down to my values column. Now the values column is where we actually get our numbers, all right? The values column, I want you to see that if you'll notice, the options in here are only numeric columns. In other words, academic session ID and all these other IDs and columns have numeric values. Your value column must be a numeric column, all right? I will show you in a bit how we can create a column using male and female to get values without having male and female being a numeric value. We'll make it a numeric value, all right? Now, once I come in here, what I want to do is I want to choose one of these numeric values. It doesn't matter which. I'm going to say student age. And when I select student age as the column, I don't want a sum of the student ages. I don't want it to add up all the students' ages. I want it to count them. So I'm going to change my aggregate function from sum to count. Okay? Now, let me go ahead and preview this report and show you how this looks. Here's my school. Here are my enrolled students. Here are my withdrawn. If I had any re-entered, they would be in there as well. So it gives me right here my header values of enrolled or withdrawn, my label values of schools, and my volume columns values columns rather, giving me the totals of each of those headers. All right? That is just a very basic thing. We can go right here to the crosstab settings and give this a title of enrollment count. And we can say again, 25 records per page. And then we can add in the header if we took it out, or add in the exports if we took those out on the insert table here, tab here. And then we can choose our export options again here. And then we can go ahead, and since we already renamed this report when we did the file save as of the other report, I just can click on save. It automatically saves my work, and I don't have to worry about losing anything. All right? And I can also change the style of this report here. Set it to professional, which it already is because of the way I copied that report. So I now want to jump back to my crosstab configuration, and I want to add another layer to the label values column section. All right? and I'm going to add the layer of student grade level. And I'm going to change the header to be GL like I did before because I just like that. It looks better that way, and I click on OK. You change the format and the alignment. Okay. So I've added that, and now when I preview the report, the way this would work is when I run it, it changes the name of the school from just appearing in black to being, if you'll notice, a link that I can click on. Now, when I click on it, it then gives me the breakdown by grade level. Okay? Just because the question has been raised, well, what if I want grade level first over school? Back here on my label values column, I can move these just like on any other. And when I move them and preview the report, it's going to give me first the breakdown by grade levels here. So here's how many students I have district-wide in the 5th grade, 7th grade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When I click on this number, it tells me how many at each school. You probably would rather have this in reverse. The only time you might want to do this is if you are just trying to get a count district-wide per grade level. Not caring what school, all right? We'll move that back up like that, all right? Then I want to add a summary row. To add a summary row, I'm really just going to scroll all the way down here and include summary row. When I do that, it asks for a caption. I'm going to put total by enroll status. It's limited to the number of characters, so I have to choose what can fit. I want a sum because I want it to count each individual and give me a sum in the format of an integer. All right? And when I select those options and click on the preview, it gives me the total enrollment status right here. It adds my summary count here and here. Okay? I'm going to add another thing. I'm going to add a summary column. And in the summary column, I'm going to give it the header of total by school / grade level. I want a sum, and I want it in the form of an integer. And let me preview that. Okay? And now I have my total enrollment, then by school and grade level here. 2 and et cetera, giving me a total here. All right? Now, at this point, I've got a pretty good cross-tab report. So I'm going to save it. And now for a little extra credit. And by extra credit, what I mean is we're going to take this and I'm going to make an advanced report, a slightly advanced, should not be too difficult from what we've done so far, report. But I'm going to create a new report by doing the save as I did before. But actually, let me show you. You can do the save as and do it the way I've shown you before, but I would like to show you the other option for how to do a copy from one report to another. So I have my enrollment cross-tab date-specific report. I'm going to select it here. I'm going to click on copy. It creates copy of enrollment date tab specific or cross-tab date specific. And it asks me, says who the owner is, I can give it a description, expiration date, all the things before. Where do I want to save it? What I want to do is I'm going to rename this one. And let's see, let's call it enroll gender X tab. That's for me. Since I'm limited to the number of characters, I'll know that this is my enrollment gender cross tab, date specific. I'll save it in my student general reports. Click on save. And that is how you can copy from one and save to another. And just as before, when I click on the modify, it has everything set up the way I had it before, but now I can add some things to it and I won't damage or change the original report. Now, you can do save as and do the same thing, but that's just the other way, and I wanted to show you both. Now, once I have done this and gone into here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this modify data source again. All right? And this time I'm going to show you a slightly more complicated calculated column. I'm going to go into calculated columns, and I'm going to create two calculated columns. The first calculated column is male. Oops, I hit the wrong key. Male. Now, in here, what I want to do is I want to create what is called a case statement. A case statement is a SQL statement. It's sort of like an if-then-else statement. It's basically saying, in the case when, and then I'll scroll down over here and select gender. Case when student.gender equal, and in single quotes type capital M-A-L-E, male, in single quotes, then one else 0 n. Now what that does, when I click on test, is it assigns the number 1 to all the males and the 0s to all the females. That's not to say that females are 0s. That's just the integer or the numeric value we're assigning to them for this calculated column. But as you recall, I named this calculated column male, so the female should be 0, okay, on this column. Once I do that, I'm going to click on Save. It adds it over here. I have my male. And now I click on New, so it blanks out this on in the column area here. I'll then click on the male column, calculated column, so that it populates this again. Now I'll type this to be female. Fat fingers. And I'm going to come right here and I'm going to rename this female. Okay? So I have case when student.gender equal female, then 1 else 0 and I will test it. As long as I see my data, 1 for females, 0s for males, and it's always going to show you the first 5. Okay, just so you're aware of that. It will always show you the first 5 records. Right? That's my females. I will save them. And now they're both part of my data source. And now I have my calculated columns right here. All right? So now I want to take those calculated columns and go back to my crosstab configuration. And I want to use those columns in my values column. As I said before, the values column can only use numeric columns. If you'll notice, student age is a numeric column, but so is now male and female because we made it that. But what I want to do is I don't want to get rid of student age. I want to leave that in here just to get the regular count because now I'm going to add an extra value column. I'm going to add the extra value column of calculated column female. I want a sum, because I wanted to add all the ones together. I'm going to name the header female, or female count. I like the way that sounds better. It's an integer and I want it to the right. Click on OK. And now I have my female sum, which we call female count. You can call it sum of females, whatever you want, but I feel like that's really kind of what we're saying here anyhow. We're counting them up. I don't care, the person that runs this doesn't care that we had to count them up by turning female into the number 1. And the next extra value column, male, it's a sum, male count, integer to the right, okay. Yes, you can, if you haven't noticed this before, I can make these sortable here if I would like. I do the same thing as this before. If I make something sortable when I get it into the report, I have the style so that I can add a condition here. So let's say I want to add the condition that when it's a male, it is, again, if I wanted to say maybe for my males, I do want to have that the condition being when the male sum is greater than 1, make it green. When I click on OK, and then preview my report, when my male, you can't tell because the number right here is green. It's very difficult to tell. So there's different ways you can do it. You can make it bold. That's another option. When you're setting up these styles, you have conditions that you can meet, and you can always go back and change those to be, different types of information here, right? Now, you can always go back and take those off. That's just a little bit extra. But with what we've done, with those two added columns, added value columns, I can run this report, and as you saw, I get for my schools, my age, which we could rename this, and I should have renamed this blank to some, just a student count. And maybe I want to move it anyway. I don't like where I put it, so I'm going to come back here and I'm going to move this down to the bottom, and I'm going to edit this so that it doesn't say age count. It's just blank, and I save it. That's a little better looking anyway. Now when I click on my preview and run, there's my totals here. There's my total count right there. Probably ought to give it some sort of name if you'd like. But there's this type of crosstab getting us the male and female count that we really couldn't get before. And just like we had with the total by enrollment status, we could create more counts and things like that. This is, like I said, this is more like an extra advanced part of a crosstab. Now that is the document in full. There's another report, part of this report, there's another page, the last page, which goes into the explanation of parameters. The explanation of parameters, I'm not going to go into that in this webinar. It'd be better for you just to sit and read through it. It just explains certain parameters that we chose and why we chose them. I tried to give you an example of that earlier when we were working on finding our currently enrolled students, and I mentioned that we didn't want to just come into here and add the parameter of currently enrolled, because then we get it for that date. It explains why these things right here, why the enrollment end date and the reported date and the end date, why those would be important to have. All right? If you do have questions, please feel free to give us a call at STI. Reach your STI customer care rep. If they're unable to answer your question, you know you can always get them to find us, and then we'll be glad to help. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's helpful to you. I hope you were able to show it to as many people as possible, and you can really start to find and use INFocus to meet your needs. INFocus is a wonderful tool. Don't be afraid of it. You can't hurt anything with INFocus. It is a reporting tool, which means all it does is read the data. It doesn't change the data in any way. You can just simply create reports with this. And as you become better with INFocus, you'll find that you'll have more and more options to do the things that you want, and more ability to create the reports that you've been looking for that you may not have been able to find built in. All right? I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. Thank you very much.